Vesa, and I'm on the Capital Innovation and Engagement team here at ReFED, and I'm thrilled to be your host for today. As people continue to trickle in, I'll take a moment to remind everyone that we are recording this session and we will be making it available publicly. So during this webinar, everyone's microphones will be muted and videos will be turned off. However, we encourage everyone to introduce themselves in the Zoom chat box. Feel free to share your name, organization, and where you're tuning in from. And if you see a friendly name, just reach out and say hi. Building relationships and connections are a really big part of ReFED's virtual events. So throughout the webinar, we'd love for you to send any questions you have via chat. We'll be monitoring the questions and we'll try to cover as many as possible during the Q&A session. And if you have any technical issues, please contact my colleague, Lily Hurd at lily.hurd@refed.org. And with that, let's jump in. Welcome to today's Food Waste Action Network Innovation Demo Day. Wherever you're tuning in from, we're excited to highlight some innovative packaging solutions that can help prevent wasted food. Packaging and food waste have a unique relationship, and they're often thought of as binary choices for a brand. Either you use packaging or you don't use packaging and potentially create more food waste. And at the same time, consumers often want less packaged food and aren't always familiar with how packaging might be preventing food waste. It's a complex situation, but that's why I'm excited to talk with our speakers today and share more about emerging packaging solutions that are helping prevent wasted food while meeting consumer needs. But before we dive in, let's take a look at packaging as a solution to food waste and climate change. So through ReFED's research and data, we found that package design and active and intelligent packaging are among the top 12 food waste prevention solutions as measured by greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So let's take a closer look at package design. Now, when ReFED talks about package design, we're looking at optimizing food packaging size and design to ensure complete consumption of the food by consumers and avoid residual container waste. So as you can see, this has the potential to reduce food waste by over 600,000 tons annually. And when you think about it, this impact makes a lot of sense, right? Because many consumers are the ones that are wasting the most food in homes than any other sector across the supply chain. And while education efforts will increase consumers' awareness of the importance of food waste reduction, designing packaging in such a way that makes it easy for them to reduce food waste can be very impactful. And we're already seeing these new package designs. So as an example, by better understanding its customers, brands have adjusted their packaging in terms of size and type. As an example, there's now a medium loaf, and traditionally canned beans are now being offered in resealable containers. We're also seeing products in more squeeze packs to make it easier to get all of the product out of the container. But of course, we also have to be thoughtful about the trade-offs and overall environmental impacts when redesigning packaging. To take packaging designs that pre-portion products, for instance, President Cheese found that by portioning its Camembert cheese from a 300-gram wheel into a 6 pre-portioned pre-packaged sections required 3.3 grams more composite paper. But the reduction in carbon emissions from preventing the cheese from going to waste and ensuring consumption was roughly 4 to 5 times higher than the impacts of having additional packaging. So it's super critical for companies to clearly prioritize what impacts they want to have when considering packaging solutions. And as we mentioned earlier, active and intelligent packaging is another top food waste solution that can fight climate change. As we all know, fresh food naturally degrades over time due to chemical changes and moisture. So technologies that help absorb these chemicals are one way to combat these impacts. Another is freshness indicators, which can help communicate remaining shelf life. And by implementing solutions like these, we have the potential to prevent over 400,000 tons of food from being wasted annually. There's a lot of fantastic innovation happening with active and intelligent packaging, ranging from freshness indicators to shelf life extension solutions. And we'll definitely learn more about these unique solutions from the companies that are highlighted here on the screen, some of which are finalists in the Sustainable Packaging Coalition's Food Waste Repackaged Innovation Challenge. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, they're a leading voice on sustainable packaging and have a membership base of companies from across the entire supply chain. And earlier this year, they launched the Food Waste Repackaged Innovation Challenge to foster new design and innovation for primary food packaging that could help prevent food waste while raising awareness about packaging's role in food waste reduction. And so joining us today from the Sustainable Packaging Coalition is Senior Manager Olga Kuchuk, who led the Innovation Challenge. Welcome, Olga. So happy you're here today.
Thanks, Angel. It's nice to be here. Happy to share more about what we learned.
Yeah, please do tell us about the challenge and how it came to be.
So the innovation challenge was spurred by an understanding that for the packaging industry, there's a lot of emphasis on recyclability and end of life, and to some extent for consumer packaged goods companies and the packaging community that serves these brands and the retailers involved. Everyone's focusing on end of life and increasingly also focusing on climate change and emissions. And really, for a lot of companies, the role of packaging in food waste and how food waste can be, impacting their climate change goals and, their emissions reductions efforts, we found that that wasn't really clear to a lot of companies. Companies might have really large brands, food manufacturers might have goals to reduce food waste in their operations, but very, very few companies have thought about how their packaging performs in consumers' homes from a food waste perspective, and to what extent they're enabling consumers to reduce less food in their homes. And because that's where a lot of the food waste in developed countries happens, is downstream in retail environments and in consumers' homes. And so it seemed like this really big, elephant in the room for these food manufacturers and retailers to have climate goals, to have end of life goals, but to not be thinking about the food waste component. And so we launched a whole learning series in May and June of this year to bring that information to companies, to highlight some of the opportunities that you mentioned around, portion sizes and making things easier to access the contents. And then we also launched this innovation challenge to see if there were innovations out there from an active and intelligent packaging standpoint, and also a packaging redesign standpoint, that companies might want to adopt to help consumers reduce food waste.
That's awesome. Any key insights or findings from this process so far that you want to share?
Yeah, well, like I said, I think it's early days for companies that are large companies thinking about this, and so that has, I think, pros and cons for startups and innovators. The good news is that this is the right time to be thinking about bringing a solution to market and engaging with companies. It's definitely not too late, but at the same time, we see that companies are still, like I said, in the early days of really thinking about it. And that means that there's a fair amount of education of being able to articulate the benefits, articulate the cost savings, to talk about what the problem is. And there's very little data on how much of a specific product in a specific type of package is wasted. And so the more that we can all fill those gaps, and the more that companies and new startups and innovators can help fill some of those gaps, the more I think that this will really resonate with large brands. So everyone is, we had a lot of advisors from CPG companies. Everyone is really excited about this space and sees a lot of potential. But we're just getting started and just at the beginning of really moving the needle with packaging design, addressing food waste.
Yeah, and just real quick, you mentioned how important education is, and I know you're working on a great report. Do you want to give a quick sneak peek to the audience?
Yeah, sure. So I think somewhere around in early next year, maybe around the spring of next year, we'll be launching a guide around packaging design and some of the best practices for designing packaging and using packaging technologies and innovations to reduce food waste. So again, it's things like portion sizes, being able to reseal a package and improve the closures. These are all things that seem pretty straightforward, and yet we see so many packages that don't have those features. And at the same time, it's exactly what consumers are saying they want. Consumers are saying, I want to be able to close this cheese. I want to be able to get all the mustard out of the container. I don't want my strawberries going moldy. And so designing packaging to have some of those properties. It's really pretty straightforward stuff, but there's so much opportunity because we see a lot of packaging that still doesn't have those components in place. So we're hoping to outline all of that, make it really straightforward, and sort of have that be a call for action on the part of brands, and I think also an opportunity to lay out the innovation potential.
Well, we can't wait to see it. I'm sure it's going to be a great resource. And thank you so much for sharing this with us, Olga. We'll see you in just a bit for the Q&A later. Thanks. Awesome. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to commence the packaging innovation demos. As you hear from our presenters today, I'd like to remind everyone to send any questions you have via chat, and we'll do our best to respond to all of them during the Q&A. Additionally, if you are interested in setting up a meeting with any of the presenters, we will be sharing out doodle polls with the audience to sign up for a meeting, as well as in an email following this event. And with that, it is my honor to welcome to the screen Bill Bergen from SaverPak. Bill Bergen is a rocket scientist, co-founder, and chief technology officer for SaverPak, a food preservation technology he invented to keep his lunch from getting soggy. Previously, Bill designed temperature, humidity, and anti-icing solutions for space vehicles, and was also a principal systems engineer for Honeywell. Bill, thank you so much for being here today. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I will hand it off to you to tell us more about SaverPak.
Okay, I'm Bill Bergen, the inventor of SaverPak's various technologies. Next slide. Our founders have a long history of working together on various tech startups, including food tech, but also IoT security and fintech. Next slide. Each founder brings their own unique expertise and specialties with very little overlap. Next slide. SaverPak extends the shelf life of produce, including leafy greens and berries, using our patented solutions derived from our many years of developing innovations in the aerospace, rocket, and missile industries. Otaka Farms in Colombia has successfully shown a 40% longer shelf life using SaverPak when transporting their golden berries, which they air freight unrefrigerated from Bogota to Amsterdam to Berlin and to London. Next slide, please. SaverPak works with leafy greens, berries, and other delicate produce items which have notoriously short shelf lives. Existing packaging, even those with respiration films, are too slow to accommodate environmental fluctuations and cannot vent or otherwise manage condensation, which accelerates the microbial load. Condensation forms quickly. SaverPak extracts the condensation from the air before it forms on your food. Next slide, please. In general, SaverPak extends the shelf life of leafy greens and berries 50% to 100% when transporting by semi-truck or train. The SaverPak sachet stays below the dew point temperature when temperature fluctuations occur during shipping. Temperature interruptions happen on average 5 times between harvest and retail, each interruption lasting up to 30 minutes. Rapid condensation occurs inside the produce packaging at this time, whether the packaging is bulk or retail size. SaverPak continues to work for the consumer after purchase, keeping produce fresher longer in the home. Next slide, please. SaverPak began its startup journey using our tech to keep hot restaurant delivery food crunchy and crispy. Next slide, please. Oh, you know what? This is the video, so please play the French fry video. In this time-lapse video, you see 2 French fry containers side by side. The SaverPak protected container has visibly less condensation. I invite you to watch all of our time-lapse videos on our SaverPak YouTube channel. And if you play this, yeah, please play the second video. McCain Foods crispness testing machine measures French fries protected by SaverPak to be almost 200% crispier. This food texture testing machine is the same machine used by NASA and the Pentagon for testing food texture and quality for astronauts and soldiers. Next slide, please. For hot food delivery applications, the saver pack is adhered to the inside surface of the container lid. The cold of the saver pack is balanced by the heat released through the formation of condensation, i.e., the exothermic enthalpy of condensation is known and predictable. Saver pack helps keep hot food delivery from restaurants crunchy and crispy longer by eliminating condensation before it can form on your food. Saver pack can eliminate 50% of the air moisture inside of a food container in less than a minute. Next slide, please. Here you see infrared imagery of pizzas side by side, one with a frozen saver pack and one without. You can see the temperature difference of the pizzas is negligible. Next slide, please. Third-party validation of our ag tech comes from our farming customers as well as UC Davis. Our hot food tech has been validated by McCain Foods, Cisco Foods, and too many other restaurants to name. Next slide. Cisco Foods is our largest customer to date, reaching restaurants around the world. Saver Pack has customers in 21 countries. Saver Pack has achieved profitability and is seeking a new round of fundraising to accelerate our growth and expand our IP portfolio. Next slide. Saver Pack is actively seeking customers for our patented produce solution in both retail and in farming. Next slide. Saver Pack is also seeking restaurateurs and those in hospitality as customers of our hot food delivery technology. And the last slide, please. Thank you. Saver Pack, it's rocket science for food.
This is awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. I have worked in the restaurant industry and I, like you, also hate soggy fries. So really happy that there's a solution like yours. Well, great. We'll see you in just a bit for the Q&A. So thank you again. And next up is Erik Nansen, the CEO of the Swedish Indian food tech company Innocencia, developing dynamic shelf life labels to indicate the status in real time. But I will let him tell you more about this innovative solution. So Erik, I'd love to welcome you onto the screen. Hey, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Angel, and thanks for having us. I'm really pleased to be here, coming to you live from a very cold and very dark Stockholm today. So I hope I have enough light here now for you to see me.
You look great. I'll let you take it away.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So yeah, as Angel said, my name is Erik Nansen. I'm the CEO of a company called Innocencia. And what we do is that we enable the shift from what we call the current static shelf life system and expiry date system that we're currently using, and with our tools making sure that we can go over to a more dynamic system where we use dynamic shelf life and dynamic expiry dates. And I will tell you a little bit more about that during these 5 minutes that I have. So let's go to next slide. We skip one more. We are a Swedish Indian food tech company. So half of our operations are based in Sweden, half in India. Me and my colleague Pelle, and together with our board, are based in Sweden. This is our first target market, and our whole development team is headed by one of our co-founders, Mr. Rambaba Atlori, and they're based in Hyderabad in India, where we have microbiologists, we have food technicians and chemists working on our solution. I want to say day and night, but at least during daytime. So that's how we have divided the company for now, which is working really great. And it's a fantastic way of utilizing the competence in India with sort of the trends and the demands that we see in Sweden and Europe at the moment. So let's go to next slide. The solution, and we start off in the problem. So we take one slide more. And there it is. So basically, I mean, we all know it, the expiry date system that we're using today with the expiry dates, sort of the best before dates, use by dates, that's highly inaccurate. It's based on a batch level where we set all of these dates. They are the same for a whole batch that is produced during one day. And in reality, I mean, food is organic products. They react in different ways, and they're also treated in different ways. One product can go to one retailer and then to one consumer that treats it really well, keeps it the temperature is very low, but another one can go to another one where the temperature is high. So basically, we lose about 20 to 30% of the shelf life with the current system. Let's go to the next slide. And that's what we want to solve. So we have developed what we call dynamic shelf life labels. It's a label that reacts in line with the bacterial growth inside the package. We start off in the meat industry. We want to move into more industries after that. But in the packaged meat, MAP packed meat, where we want to indicate the status of the product in real time, so we don't throw away a lot of food that is still eatable. Let's go to the next slide. So basically, the label is inserted inside the package, and it's put against the top plastic of the package, and then reacts with the gases that evolves in the degradation process of the meat. So we have developed a certain type of ink that reacts with these gases and thereby changes color. So going from white to purple in this case, indicating the status. Let's go to the next slide. And this brings with it a lot of values. So of course, we are reducing food waste for the consumer, the retailer, and the producer. But we have also proven in surveys with consumers in the European market that there is a price premium to retrieve when introducing this type of service for the end consumer. And obviously, there's also a brand value for the producer that introduces these types of labels to their packages in line with the sustainability and anti-food waste movement that is definitely growing among consumers today. Let's go to the next slide. So the traction, one more, please. So far, we raised about $1.5 million and received about $500,000 in grants. We are now performing pilot dialogues with some major players, both in Europe here and in other parts of the world. BRF is one of the biggest producers in Brazil, for example. We have LOIs with two of the big retailers here in Scandinavia, but also in Europe. And we've been showcased in a lot of companies, the Postcode Lottery, Green Challenge. We received a big prize from Eat Foundation, and we're also being part of Eat Food. So there's a lot of interest out there at the moment, which we're trying to capitalize on. Let's go to the next slide. So one more, please. If you want to get involved, if you want to test this and try this out, I mean, lots of people here are based in the US, but we are definitely open to working with big parts of the world. And we're looking for pilot partners to test it out in production, but also investments. We're going to raise a seed round in the spring of 2022. So if you know someone or you yourself are interested in this, we're definitely open to talk. But with that said, happy to have been here, and let's make sure that we go from a static to a dynamic system in the future. Thanks a lot.
Love that. Thank you so much, Eric. Really incredible work. We'll see you in just a bit for the Q&A, but I'm excited to welcome on the screen Moody Solomon, the CEO and co-founder of ReFED. He's an experienced entrepreneur and startup founder with more than 15 years of experience in the medical device, biotech, and ag tech industries, and has a deep passion for delivering products that ultimately improve people's health, safety, and quality of life. So Moody, we're thrilled to have you join us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Angel. A pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. My name is Moody Solomon, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of ReFED. If we can go to the next slide, please. We are a USDA and NSF funded crop protection company. We're developing and commercializing biomimicry solutions to combat global food waste sustainably and safely. Our leadership team, next slide, please. One more. Thank you. Our leadership team has over 85 years of combined experience innovating and commercializing highly innovative technologies in the ag tech industry, medical device industry, biotech, and our R&D team actually comprises highly talented scientists and engineers with deep expertise in science, microbiology, material science, and they're developing our solutions today that reduce food waste. Next slide, please. Next one. Okay, so most of you are well aware of the food waste problem. Nevertheless, to put things in perspective, by the time I'm done with this presentation, so over the next 5 minutes, we will have wasted enough food to feed over 5 million people. This is due to the fact that we have a very inefficient food supply chain system. We experience losses all across the supply chain, from the farm all the way down to the consumer. So to make a real impact, we not only have to come up with an innovative solution that is effective and can minimize waste at every stage, but it also has to be economical and very easy to adopt. And so this is where we come in. At ripelabs, we've developed a natural, safe, and sustainable formulation that can be applied to a variety of surfaces, including stickers, to extend the shelf life via the vapor phase for up to 14 days by releasing natural volatile compounds to inhibit premature rotting. So let me show you. We have here two mangoes side by side. The one on the left does not have a sticker on it. The one on the right is treated with the sticker. Simply peel and apply the sticker. The formulation is applied to the surface on the non-sticky side, so where you see the branding. And if you can go ahead and play the video, please. As you'll see here, by about day 14, the mango on the left starts to prematurely rot, while the one on the right is a lot more resistant to the premature rotting and can stay fresher longer. And this is again due to the volatile compounds that we've encapsulated, applied to the surface of the sticker, and released over time to protect the produce from premature rotting. This can be applied to a wide range of fruits, from large loose fruits to packaged fruits. For example, if you're working with blueberries, you're not going to apply a sticker to every blueberry. We have other applications that are delivery vehicles that simply deliver the formulation in the same way that the sticker functions. Next slide, please. So in terms of traction, here's where we are today. We're working with a growing number of global customers on pilot studies, tailored solutions. And these include some of the household names, largest household names in the industry, across the entire supply chain. And we cover every stage in over 7 countries across 4 continents. We're working with these customers. And to date, we have seen through these pilot studies, between 52% to 96% reduction in losses when applying our technologies on a variety of fresh fruits, including strawberries, blueberries, nectarines, mangoes, and citrus. Next slide, please. So please join us. I look forward to your questions and to chatting. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Moody. This is really great. I really appreciate you sharing such an effective solution. We'll see you in just a bit for the Q&A. But next up, it is my honor to introduce Solveiga Pachtate. I think I'm saying your last name correctly, I hope. But Solveiga is an inventor and entrepreneur with an industrial design background. She's the founder and director of Mimica and was named MIT's Technology Review's Inventor of the Year. She also holds an honorary lectureship at UCL and consults on innovation projects for leading consumer and technology companies. Solveiga, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to introducing our solution to everyone today. Okay, I think we can make a start. So just to introduce myself, my name is Solveiga. I come from an industrial design background, and I'm the founder of Mimica and the original inventor of our technology. And as you can see here, I've brought in people, 2 kind of really experienced guys from the smart packaging space with a proven track record in this business. They've set up and sold a business in this area. And between us, we have over 50 years of business experience. Definitely, I just add a small portion of that, but it's a good combination in the team. And then outside of the management team, we have a multidisciplinary product team where we have food scientists working side by side with product designers and engineers, so making a great combination. Next slide, please. So up to 83% of the food that is wasted in Europe, at least, is still perfectly edible. And the issue here is that we have to use cautious expiry dates, which are mandated, which is a good thing because they're here to protect consumers. But we have to set them up with the worst case scenario because, as was already explained by Eric, we don't know what's actually going to happen to each individual package. So next slide. And we see this as being a great opportunity to help create better brand loyalty by helping increase consumer confidence and helping them waste less. by kind of showing people how long their food really lasts. So we found that 65% of people said that they would actually buy larger packs of food if only that they could use them up in time. And we know that that shelf life is already there. So this is a great opportunity. Next slide. So what kind of opportunity is there? So if we were to extend the shelf life of a perishable food by just 2 days, we could cut retail waste in half. We could see food waste being reduced in the home by 63%, and we'd also expect to see a sales lift of about 10%. Next slide. But why does this happen? So firstly, there's a longer time to actually sell the product on the shelf before it gets wasted. Extra days to consume helps consumers feel like they're actually going to use it up in time, like pointing to the stat I shared earlier, and it encourages them to buy more or buy one when they weren't going to buy any at all. And then, all of this will help drive loyalty and return purchases. Next slide. So our solution to achieve this is we've developed a label that tells you exactly when food spoils according to when the bumps appear on the label. So it is a tactile system, and we calibrate the gel inside our labels to tell you to map and match to the specific food that it's targeting. So the gel inside is specific in terms of the temperature sensitivity of that specific food, and we have a format for caps as well. So if we go to the next slide. We can watch a short demo. Maybe we don't need to watch all of it.
The supermarket and is putting his food away in the fridge. One of the things he bought is a bottle of juice from his favorite brand. When he's in the supermarket, he's careful to check that there is a decent number of days left on the expiry date on products to avoid wasting them. This one here expires on the 22nd of November. However, expiry dates are just estimates based on worst-case conditions to protect consumers. Under normal conditions, the more likely date is 28th November. But this cautious approach wastes a lot of perfectly good food and drinks. The Mimica touch system has been developed to tell you exactly when your food is fresh or should no longer be consumed based on real temperature conditions. One of the ways the Mimica touch system can be applied is as a cap on the bottle of your juice. Simon has one here. The way the cap works is simple. The cap is activated once you open the bottle as normal. You don't need to do anything extra. If you want to check if the juice is still fresh, just feel the surface of the cap. Is it smooth? Good. Then your juice is still fresh. Does it feel bumpy? Then it should no longer.
Okay, next slide. Thank you. So we're pleased to have received a number of awards and grant funding, and that's enabled us to run the 2 live projects that we're doing currently now on juice, as you could see, and also on beef, and that we're doing with several producers across Europe, and we're working with one of the leading juice companies on the juice project as well. Next slide. And I guess that's all that's left for me to say is that if you're interested in getting involved, we're looking for pilot customers in the juice, red meat, and soon fish area. So if that's you or someone in this field, please let's start conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Solveiga. That was fantastic. Really, really great work. Well, hang tight and we'll see you in just a bit for the Q&A. But up next is my absolute pleasure to welcome, last but not least on the screen, Deepraj Rajmajan, CEO of GreenPod Labs. Deepraj, thanks so much for being here. I'll hand it off to you to tell us a bit more about your solution.
Thanks, Angel. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate everyone's time. So I'm Deepraj Rajmajan, CEO, founder of GreenPod Labs. Next slide, please. The management team comprises of myself and Vijay. I have a master's in food science and 7 years of research experience. And Vijay has about 13 years of operational experience. And then we have a wide spectrum of R&D scientists, directors, and operation engineers. Next slide, please. Our solution is very simple. So we've developed a biotechnology-based active packaging in a small sachet form, similar to a small sugar packet or so. You drop these sachets inside a fruit or vegetable crate that helps you extend the shelf life during transport and storage. One of the major problems, be it in developing countries or developed countries, the post-harvest losses after harvest, it's about 30 to 40%. Specifically, the country where we are in India, about 40% is lost before it reaches the consumer. This is because of lack of infrastructure and other facilities. So our product works in a small sachet form, and then we use plant extracts to extend the shelf life. Next slide, please. We use a science called defense mechanism, which slows down the ripening rate and prevent any microbial growth. Those are the two major reasons of spoilage of fruits and vegetables. We identify a specific defense mechanism in each fruit and vegetable. We develop a proprietary formulation using plant extracts and plant polymer. We use data to precisely customize for each customer request and for each crop. Next slide, please. A competitive advantage, we have a patent on the product, and we use all plant extracts and plant polymer to activate the defense mechanism in each fruit and vegetable. Our product is extremely cost effective because it comes in a small sachet form. It can be deployed throughout the supply chain. Next slide, please. We've tested the product with several fruits and vegetables. On average, we see 40 to 80% increased shelf life at room temperature, 35 degrees Celsius, eliminating any need for cold storage and cold depletion. So we've tested with pomegranates. Next slide. We've tested with figs. Next slide, please. With respect to traction, we've gone from a single prototype, currently working with about 25 plus customers. Next slide, please. We've raised a pre-seed investment of about 120K, and we're currently closing our seed round of 600K USD. We've completed a development on 3 crops, and we're moving towards commercialization. Next slide. We strongly believe food waste is a preventable problem, and if you believe so, please join us with this mission. Next slide. We're looking for partners in terms of commercializing our product and doing testings on our product, both from farmers and producers and also retailers. Apart from that, we're also looking for a university partnership to conduct product validation studies, both in functionality and safety from our product side. Next slide. Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. This is great. Well, I'm so excited about all of these solutions, and I know we're getting questions from the audience, so would love to welcome all of the speakers back onto the screen for a Q&A session. See everyone joining. And we got quite a few questions actually for you, Bill, so I might ask you to kick us off. I think that there are a few questions, what is SaverPak made from? Is it compostable? How do you dispose of it? And can it be used more than once? I would love for you to kind of share more.
Yeah. Well, I tried to answer those, right there on the spot. But so SaverPak, its primary construction is plant cellulose. The active ingredient that's really pulling the moisture out of the air is temperature. So it's refrigerated with produce. Produce is refrigerated through most of its normal process. SaverPak has some measured amount of water in this plant cellulose structure. That water is suspended and chilled through the normal refrigeration of the produce. When you have an interruption in the refrigeration cycle, water holds on to that cold temperature. It's very good as a thermal cold sink. And so it takes a lot of time to move that off that temperature. And so it stays below the dew point temperature. When you have these temperature interruptions, you have huge amounts of moisture being released into the air through respiration or through other sources. And SaverPak pulls that out of the air before it can form. Now that's the ag solution. For hot food, it's frozen actually. It's still a plant cellulose. It's still water. The thing doing the work is temperature. But the ice content for the hot food applications is balanced against the heat that we know is going to be released through the formation of condensation. So the endothermic melting is less heat than the exothermic heat, ounce for ounce, pound for pound. It's something like 6 or 7 to 1. So we have a thermodynamically neutral solution for our hot food delivery. And it is compostable, so it's plant cellulose. We just received our certification for freshwater compostability. So in the US, I believe there's only the one standard, which is municipality compostable, which really isn't used anywhere else in the world. So we're really trying to meet a higher standard for compostability, but backyard compostability is our end goal.
Great, thank you. The next question actually is for you, Eric. And you on the spot now. kind of based on how your solution works, we've been talking a lot about how to make these solutions inclusive. And so curious if, how it would work for anyone who might be blind or colorblind, or if you have a different alternative solution for those in that regard.
Yeah, so that's a tricky question. I know, people who are blind, I see that with the solution that we have today, that's not optimal for them. I think a solution that like Mimica have, that's perfect to cater to those needs. We are also developing a digital version. It's definitely further down the line. There's a lot more development need to be done in terms of the price of it. But with that, I can see that there could be a situation where you would scan it with a smartphone and then get it read to you. But maybe I'm stretching a little bit here. In terms of color blindness, that's also, there's different types of color blindness. It's a quite small part of the population, and mainly you will have problems seeing green or red, or the comparison. You would see here the contrast from white to a darker color, and that you would still see. So yeah, so I might pass it over to Mimica to help those consumers actually that are blind.
It definitely takes a team effort. And I guess while we're talking with you, Eric, people are curious about what your product is made from.
What it's made from? Oh, that's a good question. So basically, it's an ink. It's a reactive ink that we have developed in-house. Can't tell you that much more about what's in it before we file the patent next week. So, but basically, we have exactly. We cross our fingers. But we have a substrate. It's a semi-permeable substrate, which is approved for food contact. And on top of that, we print the ink and we print the graphic design, and then we apply a layer of adhesive on top of that. So basically, it's like a label, but the other way around. So in a normal label, you would have adhesive and then the substrate and then the ink on top of that. But we changed that up a little bit, and that's to be able to put it on the inside. So that's how it's constructed, and it has the same sort of recyclability as a normal label. So normally they are washed off. They are washed off in the recycling process and then taken to recycling. So separated from the plastics that are put onto.
Awesome, thanks. And Solveiga, we had a question come through for you about kind of buying more food and how that relationship with wasting less food. Could you share a bit more on that?
Of course, yeah, that's something that obviously we think about a lot as well. So it's a good question. It seems like it's an oxymoron at the start, but really what I mean by that is that, like, if you think about that food product globally, yes, we want like less to be produced in order to feed the people that we need. Like, in fact, we should just be producing the amount that we need to feed people. What we're talking to is the customers that we work with, the innovators who actually want to bring on this solution on board as like a point of difference. They will see that sales lift and benefit from having this kind of solution on board. But the global food consumption of that, or hopefully the production in the end, will go down. However, we can't also ignore the fact that the population continues to rise. So we also need to increase our consumption. So I don't think the food industry is going to be shrinking anytime soon, but really this is about the efficiency of actually eating what is produced. And for the innovators who we're working with, who want to stick their necks out and try a new standard of food freshness information, yes, they should be seeing an increase in sales, and that's what our pilots are showing.
Perfect, thank you. This question is actually, I think, for everyone. Curious to hear what lessons can be drawn. There's a relatively slow pace in the adoption of these solutions. So kind of any lessons learned or insights into how we can kind of increase adoption of solutions like yours?
Please, Eric.
Yeah, well, we're talking a lot about both push and pull. We're seeing today a never before seen sort of trend among consumers when it comes to sustainability and knowledge about the food that they consume. we think this will just be growing, and I mean, we're sharing the picture that you guys on Mimica have, that the companies producing food that doesn't take responsibility of their packaging, of their products, of their food waste, they will, if not die, they will stop growing, which is pretty much dying. So I mean, that's inevitable, and that's something that we need to use in terms of also using for making sure that the adoption is there, because there is a big part of the consumption base right now that wants to adopt new types of solutions, but the conservative industry is standing in their way. That's a little bit like what we feel, and more are waking up, but it's going too slow. So I think let's use the force of the consumers and the consumer group to get this going.
There's that, and then if I can just add also, I think you can be as warm and cuddly and impactful for the planet as you like, but I think it really boils down to having a really clear return on investment story as well that comes along with a solution like ours. All of us here are in packaging. It's an incredibly tough space because it's an industry for the longest time that has to have any updates or changes either have to be cost neutral or cost saving, and that's such a incorrect way of looking at it. And if that solution, packaging solution, it just so happens that it's packaging, actually ends up like generating more income or saving costs in other ways. And so, you know, we try not to describe ourselves too much as a packaging company, despite us being very happy to present here today, but as a profit optimization tool that happens to like be delivered, you know, on packaging. And I think we start looking, so like, I think this is like so much is a packaging problem. And then the other side of this is that it's really important to design our solutions to be easy to implement with existing systems. So that's something that we did for our CAP. We actually weren't even intending to have a CAP format, but we were working with a dairy partner, and their line speed of like how many bottles they're running down the line every day is like insane. And so that's why we actually built it into the CAP and made it the same kind of size that we could just literally pour these into their regular hopper, and they're screwed on in the normal way. So we try to be disruptive in our thinking, but not disruptive in our implementation. So I think these are all kind of key points that I think is going to drive success in this space.
And if I could add, based on some of the gaps in this space, I think companies are really looking for sort of on that packaging idea of, you know, pitching yourself as a packaging technology or something else. I think companies are really looking for climate change solutions. And so to the extent that all of this can be framed as this is how you reduce emissions and impacts further down in your supply chain, is going to change the game, because then it becomes something that's really less about, you know, the technical packaging specs and all of that, and more about the bigger picture and these goals that all companies have set that they are having a really hard time, frankly, figuring out how to achieve. So the more that all of that data can be pulled in, and that case can be made that, hey, you know, by reducing this amount of food, this is what it translates to with emissions. And just as a pitch for the ReFED's impact calculator, that's one really great way to help, you know, turn some of that, create some of those data points and numbers around, you know, how much, if you reduce food waste, how much that translates to the climate change impacts.
I just have a slightly different thought process around this. Like, I think we have to differentiate between countries like US and developed countries, and then countries like India in the developing space. The food waste problem is not same on these two extremes. It's completely different. Whereas one side, we're looking more from the customer's point of view, and then they're pushing towards minimizing their food wastage. But the other side, like India, we're the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables, but still the global export is less than 2%. This is so much of untapped potential which can be opened up if you just bring up these solutions into the market and push that out. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to communicate that there's a huge potential which can be achieved if you adopt these technology. I think that's been more promising in India. So that's another angle to it, not just the sustainability side, but also the opportunity what we can achieve through it.
Moody or Bill, did you have anything, or Eric, did you want to add on?
Oh, well, with regards to adoption, we started at the top. We showed our technology to Cisco Foods, to McCain Foods. I mean, these two brands are juggernauts in the food space, not just for food delivery and restaurants, but they do transcend and they go into ag some. And so once we convinced them of our tech and got them on board, so that was the work. As far as adoption, we didn't try to some grassroots campaign. You know, I mean, of course, we're trying to get the message out to the consumer so they understand us. But you're selling the big influencers. Now you got them behind you, and that was massive for us for adoption.
I'll just add that I originally come from the medical device and biotech industry, so other really high tech industries. And one of the interesting things I saw when I first came into this industry about 5-6 years ago was how thirsty and desperate the industry was for innovation, even just as little as 6 years ago, and how much change we've just seen over those 6 years. So for some of the pilot customers we're working with today, talking to them just 4 years ago, that wasn't really innovations like this outside of the gold standard of refrigeration and 1MCP and CO2 control wasn't really top of mind. And now those very same pilot study customers have an entire team and a division dedicated to evaluating these technologies. And this is all happening over a very short period of time. So we're definitely trending towards a lot more openness and encouraged really by those highly conservative customers to explore and adopt these technologies.
I really agree. I must say that when we started 6 years ago, we got from many producers the question about sort of if people waste less, we will actually sell less. So that will be bad for our business. But we never get that question anymore. I mean, no one thinks that way anymore. They understand that if we don't take responsibility, we will sell less anyway. So that's really a big sort of evident change in the industry, how it's gone from not understanding how important this is to having it top priority, I think. I just want to add one thing more. I mean, there's one more way of making sure there is adoption, and that's regulation. And I think that's on all of us to influence our politicians to make sure that we have regulation that pretty much, I mean, prohibits the misuse and wastage of food, as they do in France, for example, as they're now doing in Denmark, and as we see some actually in China as well, some new regulations coming up. So I mean, that would be a way to definitely put some fire on the change makers in the industry if there's regulation pointing towards this, and that's up to us as citizens to make that happen, I think.
Great, thank you. We're getting a lot more questions, and so we have another one here actually about solutions that help with more precise evaluation of freshness. So curious to hear from the group, like how do we know that consumers won't avoid purchasing and using the freshest product, right? And actually throw a product away earlier if, for instance, it's maybe just like slightly purple or maybe just a tiny bit, you know what I mean? So curious to hear from the group how we solve for that.
I'll just weigh in and just say in our case, our solution is binary. So you don't have the kind of not maybe comparing kind of beforehand. It changes, it goes through a phase change, our gel. So like water doesn't boil at 97, it boils at 100. So that's like in the same way the gel kind of collapses and reveals the bumps like in a binary way. We would try to have the same level of clarity as a black and white expiry date, because that's really important in behavior change. You can't like take away certainty if you're expecting consumers to change.
Yeah, I can just weigh in there. We, on the other hand, we have a progressive development of the label reaction. But how we see that is that degradation of organic products is not linear. So it doesn't develop linearly, but rather exponentially. So our label reaction would pretty much look like white, 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 original expiry date, white, and then a little bit purple, and then very purple. That is what we believe it will look like. We're still doing those tests right now. And so I think it has a lot to do with calibration and also messaging for the end consumer. But the behavior you're talking about, that's the one that we see right now. People standing in the store looking at different dates and taking the one that has the longest date, even though they're going to cook it tonight. So that's behavior we already have. So we just need to create technology that is tailored to actually make us behave in the right way, I would say.
Great. And then I guess another question for everybody, can you share like any of the LCA results on potential carbon emission savings from your products, producing the product versus, saving food waste?
Sure, yeah, we actually did a calculation recently just looking at the top 8 fruits that we're targeting. And specifically looking at the waste that's resulting from pathological damage or fungal infections, which is what we specifically go after. And we've estimated that we could potentially save up to 26 million tons of CO2 from being emitted. Now that includes both the landfilling of the produce, so actually transporting all this waste to the landfills, and then the CO2 produced after it ends up in the landfills. So it's quite significant, and if we extrapolate this, that can be over, in the hundreds of millions of tons that can be saved, which very much aligns with all the studies that are out there that one of the top ways to target CO2 emissions and greenhouse gases is to reduce food waste.
And as a general rule of thumb, what we've seen in doing some research on LCAs for this question for a number of different packaging formats, we don't do the LCAs, but I've looked at some studies that have done that. And, food is usually 95% of a product's impacts, and then 5% is the packaging. And so almost always, unless you're talking about some very lightweight, small product like herbs in a plastic clamshell, when you have the product and the packaging, almost always whatever small modifications you're making to the package to help improve food waste. So, the extra grams are far and away worth it from an impact standpoint in order to reduce the food waste. So it's almost never an issue where, you're accidentally creating more emissions by improving the packaging. That happens, I think, in a very small number of cases. Usually it's the opposite.
Yeah, we found that too. We recently ran actually we believe we should move away from the LCA phrase, because that really speaks to only like the impact of producing a product rather than the net impact of what actually is happening. So I want to urge all of you to go away and start saying net impact instead of LCA. So when we did a net impact study on in the case of orange juice, which actually is probably like a worst case scenario in our case, like actually the cap is adding slightly more plastic than like the kind of label in the end will, and then juice is like wasted less than maybe some other products and things like that. But even with all of these things like considered, we predict that we'll be able to reduce the emissions of orange juice by 25%. And we're just running our net impact study for beef at the moment. So we haven't got the results yet, but we expect that to be far, far kind of higher. So really excited to share the results when those are ready.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today, but a huge thanks to all of our speakers. This was a really, really great learning event for everybody. So thank you so much. And a huge thanks to all of our audience members for joining us today. There's so much innovation happening and still so much to learn in the world of packaging and food waste. So we really want to encourage all of you to connect with our speakers today. So if you'd like a direct introduction via email, feel free to contact my colleague Lily Ferd with a request. And we'll also help facilitate meetings with any of the presenters, and we'll send out a form in our follow-up email in case you're interested in moving forward with a meeting. So this is just the first of many innovation demo days, and we're always looking to improve our programming. So we would love for you to take a few minutes just to share your feedback by answering the poll questions that are appearing on the screen. Your responses will be anonymous, and so if any of you have additional feedback, feel free to email us. I'll give people a few moments to submit their responses. Let those come through. Great, amazing. Well, thank you so much for your input. And on the note of programming, we do have a couple of events coming up on November 17th, just 1 week away. Join our next installment of the Following the Roadmap webinar series focused on ReFED's last action area, recycle anything remaining. And don't miss out, register today using the link that's going to be sent through in the chat. And to all of the funders on the call today, if you like what you heard today and want to learn more about solutions and startups in the food waste space, definitely join ReFED's brand new Food Waste Funder Circle to get access to pitch day events, deal flow reports, and informational programming around investment in food waste solutions. Sign up today and join our launch event on December 8th using the links coming through the chat. With that, I want to thank our presenters and everyone again for joining us today. We'll see you guys next time and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.